العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب ومن شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد. صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. Inshallah, we'll request our respected guest scholar, Sheikh Mahdi, to begin the lecture. Let us welcome him with the salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة على رسول الله وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين وأصحابه المنتجبين سيما بقية الله في الأرضين عجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Inshallah, we'll continue with our reading and study of letter 31 from Nahj al-Balagha, where Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salatu wasalam is admonishing his son and giving him life advice. And we are learning from this letter, inshallah, how to work with our children and also how to organize community efforts, community infrastructure, and roadmaps for how we can best raise children, Muslim children, practicing Muslim children, inshallah, in this day and in this country. So we arrived here. The Imam is now, again, at this point, the Imam has given a series of introductory remarks and admonishments. He's going to review some of the points that he made earlier. And we spoke about kind of the emphasis of valuing what the Imam is saying and the purpose that a letter like this is supposed to play. So because of that, the Imam takes a moment to pause. We shared maybe like 10 or 15 different things so far with his son. And just to not make this a very long list of admonitions, where after a certain while becomes, a little bit monotonous, it becomes overwhelming. The Imam says, okay, let's take a break here again. Let's revisit the purpose, why I'm sharing this with you, and what I want you to do with it. So your terms of engagement are clear, and that you know really how to take best advantage of what I'm sharing with you. So we're going to read from those portions, inshallah, and then as we stated in nights past, we're kind of picking up the pace a little bit to cover a little bit more ground, but hopefully still be wary of the points that the Imam is making. So let's continue. يا بني إني وإن أكن عمرت عمر من كان قبلي. So, my dearest son, although I have not lived the lives of all of those who have passed before me, lived their lives, meaning had their experiences, or even lived alongside them, in the same time period or in the same places. فقد نظرت في أعمالهم. I have, though, examined their conduct, their deeds. وفكرت في أخبارهم, and I have pondered over their reports and their histories. وسرت في آثارهم, and I have also roamed around their ruins and the things that they've left behind. حتى عدت كأحدهم, such that to such an extent that it was like I was one of them. بل كأني بما انتهى إلي من أمورهم قد عمرت مع أولهم إلى آخرهم فعرفت صفو ذلك من كدره ونفعه من ضرره. To such an extent, I became, acclimated with their way of life. It's as if I become one of them. Rather, because of the information of them that has reached me, that I've been able to solicit, it is as though I had lived with the first of the and to the last. Which means it's not even that I understand a certain period. My appreciation of what's being shared of me, of certain peoples or of history as a whole, allows me to feel like I've lived with them throughout history. And as a result, I know what deeds of theirs were pure, were good, and which of them were bad and murky. What was beneficial and what was harmful. So again, here, the Imam is saying, take advantage of the experiences of other people. We only lived life once. We only live this life once. Though we have a continuation of life and life to come after, we really don't have as many opportunities, or we don't have a guaranteed period in our lives right now for us to say, well, if things don't go well the first time or the second time, we'll eventually learn. It's true to a certain extent, but using trial and error as kind of the main approach and mechanism to gaining experience and learning is incredibly inefficient, number one. Number two, it's risky because there are we have to live with the consequences of our actions, our inactions. Because of that, the Imam says, I'm trying to mine this experience from the people who were before us. That's really important. And again, just like we read in some of the earlier sections, the Imam is not just saying go read history. He's saying kind of clarify for yourself what it is that you're trying to do in your life. And once you have a clear vision, now turn to history, turn to the experiences of other people, and use those to identify successes and failures, and then adopt and adapt them to your circumstances. You'll be a lot further ahead. Not that you won't have any problems anymore, but starting from, kind of like clean slate, tabula rasa, we don't know anything, we're going to start as if this is the first time anyone has ever done this, is not very smart. In any organization that you enter, there's a certain way that that organization operates. Now, you may go there to try and identify inefficiencies and correct them, right? There's a level of kind of like gap analysis that's done. Hey, you're doing things this way. There's a better way of doing it. This is how we can do it. But to throw everything out and try to start from beginning, it's time consuming, it's resource intensive. And after a certain while, a lot of times those projects will fail. The Imam says here, there's so much information that's available to us, and in this day and age, more than any time in history. At our fingertips, literally, with the supercomputers that we have available to us, we have access to things that past nations only dreamt of. So what do we do with all of that? The Imam's obviously not saying to become learned in everything that ever happened to every person in every time in history. He's saying go there looking for what works and use that to your advantage, and also look to the things that were failures. So if you're trying to learn in the area of raising children, you should have some resources at least of how to effectively do that. So at a general level, at a theoretical level, you turn to the tradition. What does Islam have to say about raising good children? You take that, and then you go to people's experiences. Okay, well, in this context, this is how people try to raise their kids. This were the successes and the failures, and these were also the circumstances. You map them out. Then you turn to contexts that may be similar to yours, circumstances that were similar to yours. People in one generation prior, 2 generations prior, what were their experiences, what were the successes, and what were the failures? Right now, people who are trying to raise children as Muslims in America, what are their experiences like, and how can I best utilize them? So look, it's about not just access to information, but mining information that's available to us. And if there isn't, it's about bringing together the collection of information and data, collaborative efforts to try and put together, compile our experiences, and then through that begin to analyze and say, hey, listen, this is what's worked for us. Let's see if we can derive some sort of general principle or practice and then apply it across the board. We need this badly. I just very recently completed a study that was being done on the I think the study was focusing on the moral upbringing of Muslim adolescents, and the study that was being done out of the one of the universities in Ohio It was called Religious Schooling of Muslim Adolescents. So they were surveying teachers who taught high school Muslim students in full-time or part-time Islamic schools. They had all sorts of different things in there in that survey. And the study has certain objectives, but really this is one of very few initiatives that are taken to study this information, to survey the population, to get some data points of where we are, what works and what doesn't. Obviously, I mean, needless to say, this was a study that was being funded and it was being supported by the university. It was part of a graduate project that the student was doing. So it's not like it was community funded or community run. But the larger point is that very few of these things are actually taking place, right? There are not just opportunities, but there's a need for us to gather our experiences and then try to organize them and then mine them to see what we can learn. With all of the data that's being collected about us, all the information that's being mined from us, whether we want to or don't want to, or whether we like it or not, it behooves me why we're not doing this already for our own needs. So this is one of the takeaways, the practical takeaways, for the community to come together, again, in certain localities, but also on a national level, to gather this information, conduct these surveys, and then use these as a starting point to bring people into conversation about how we can best address this issue of raising Muslim children in America. So again, this is what I'm picking up from what the Imam is saying here. This general advice is good, but as an action item, I think for us, this is a very accessible thing for us to do. There's plenty of organizations here that I think will be supportive, will lend resources and funds to conduct these kind of studies. And that information can stay in-house. It's not like we have to publish it anywhere. It can stay in-house and can be used, again, as an invaluable resource to have an assessment of where we are, and then also begin to plan to address some of our struggles. I am a big advocate for that, and I'm supportive of anyone who has ideas or is engaging in any of these types of projects. Please feel free to reach out to me if there's anything I can do to lend my support. I hope that I can be a part of some of these efforts moving forward. I had a few of these ideas myself because I attend these national conferences where Muslims get together, Shia get together. Sometimes you have hundreds, sometimes you have more than 1,000 people will get together. It's prime opportunity for us to conduct these research. In any case, this is what the Imam is saying. So he's saying that I'm learning from the people who was before me to see what worked and what didn't. فاستخلصت لك من كل أمر نخيلا وتوخيت لك جميلا وصرفت عنك مجهولا ورأيت حيث عناني من أمرك ما يعني الوالد الشفيق. So the Imam then says, now that I studied all these things and figured out what was right and wrong, what's good and bad, what works and doesn't work, what's beneficial and what's harmful, I, as a father, as a parent, as an adult, as an elder, have taken upon myself to extract for you the best of every deed, and earmarked for you the most beautiful, and thereby diverted from you what is unknown by teaching you about it. I thought it best, since your affairs worry me insofar as I'm your father, and insofar as I've decided to teach you discipline, that I teach it to you while you yet have a lifetime ahead of you, and an age before you, and you are with sound intention and untarnished soul. Again, so building on this idea of collection of data and conducting of surveys and research, Imam then says, of all the things that are available, I took it upon myself to analyze this and say, these are the best things. The keys to success for you are these things. And remember, the Imam here is not just saying, he's not just sharing generalities. Not just sharing generalities. There are generalities that, this wisdom is clear across, all different cultures and religions and civilizations. No, the Imam's not saying like, oh, you have to work hard. You have to be committed. You have to persevere. No, not those things. The Imam's saying that I'm working through the materials that are available to me, and I'm also putting it through the filter of an Islamic life And I'm choosing for you, based on that, the best of them. So a lot of the heavy lifting is being done on my part as a parent. So again, taking initiative. And the encouragement is for parents to think in those terms too. And the reason why I did that, he says, وَاجْتَمَعْتُ عَلَيْهِ مِنْ أَدَبِكَ أَنْ يَكُونَ ذَلِكَ وَأَنْتَ مُقْبِلُ الْعُمْرِ وَمُتَقَبِّلُ الدَّهْرِ ذُو نِيَّةٍ سَلِيمَةٍ وَنَفْسٍ صَافِيَةٍ. Because again, like we mentioned last night, you are at a state right now that you're incredibly impressionable. If I lay the groundwork correctly right now, you'll accept it from me. There aren't many distractions, and there aren't other approaches that have found way already in your heart and mind that you would resist or reject what I'm sharing with you. Then he continues, وأن أبتدئك بتعليم كتاب الله عز وجل وتأويله والشرائع الإسلام وأحكامه وحلاله وحرامه لا أجاوز ذلك بك إلى غيره. This is so important right here, what the Imam's saying. All right, so remember where we are. I'm saying I studied at pretty much everything that was at my disposal of all other people. I was able to figure out the right and the wrong, the good and the bad. Then of all of those things, I chose pretty much the best of the best, the cream of the crop, and I presented them to you for you to be able to, achieve success in life. And I did this while you were young. And in preparing you for life with these keys to success, how did I begin this exercise? He says, I began this process by teaching you the book of Allah. Almighty is He and Sublime, and its meaning, and the laws and etiquettes of Islam. What is sanctioned, what is permitted, and what is prohibited, while not engaging you in anything beyond that. لا أجاوز ذلك بك إلى غيره. So he said the starting point for you to kind of understand all of the admonitions that I'm going to share with you. I began by laying the groundwork. How? By teaching you the Quran and helping you in understanding what the Quran is communicating. And at the next stage, I taught you about the teachings of Islam in the form of the Sharia, the permissible and impermissible acts, the acceptable and the unacceptable acts, the ethical and the unethical acts. So he says these are the two things that I started with. And what's really important here is, he said, while not engaging you in anything beyond that. This is, we always, we get these kind of questions and we're puzzled in our philosophy of education. Where do we start? Right? There's so much that can be done. What do we start with? So there's a strong argument to be made that early education focuses on Quran and its different facets and the teachings of kind of the foundations of the Islamic Sharia. When the Imam is now saying I kind of your major education exclusive to those things. Now, whatever it is that we'd like our children to accomplish in those early ages, I'm saying, let's say from the age that they go to school, 4 or 5 years old, for those first few years, let's say for 3, 4, 5 years until they're 10 years old. Okay, those first 5 years of all the things that they learn, there's a strong argument to be made that they should become proficient in teaching of the Quran, understanding of the Quran, and in their understanding of the broad contours of the Sharia. So by 10 years old, 11 years old, that child for the most part, there's a framework by which they see the world, they understand the world. And then their values, at least at an elementary or theoretical level, is understood. And then they begin to judge the world or assess the world in accordance to those things. So all of those things that we think is reserved for teaching later because our children are mature later and they've had world experiences and they'll understand and appreciate them more, the Imam is kind of saying the opposite here. Saying, make at the center, if not exclusively, the teaching of your children, the Quran and the Sharia. Now, someone may say, brother, that's an excellent point. Thank you. But he's speaking to a son right now that's not a child. So he's saying, as I taught you, I taught with the Quran and the Ahkam. He's probably talking to a teenager or even a young man or even a middle-aged man, because Imam is writing this towards the end of his life. So children are not young kids. They're grown adults. Yes, that's a fair point. But again, we're using this letter as a model to apply to all of our children. Because again, if we want to use that, that argument, and I'm not saying it's wrong flat out, but some of the other things the Imam is saying in the letter, you're a young man, you're impressionable, and I want to get there before your heart hardened. All right. So if the son's 40 years old, has that happened yet, or has it not happened yet? When does it happen? So again, it seems like the Imam is focusing his attention on younger people. And when he says, I'm teaching you these things, I began with teaching the Quran and its meaning and the Sharia and its limits. It's really important for us to fit that into our curriculums. How to construct the curriculum, those are kind of different. They're later discussions to have, and they're important. But right now, it's like the early phases of education need to be Quran-centric, need to be Sharia-centric. And then finding those things within Quran, Sharia, that we can build upon one another, that is not too taxing for the children, but at the same time challenges them and asks them to engage with the world in ways that they can utilize what the Quranic teachings are telling them. So that has to do with navigating relationships. It has to do with their approach to life, how they value things, what things are more valuable, what things are less valuable. When it comes to interacting in commerce and any sort of trade, because these are things that kids are doing too. They just play acted, right? We recently installed kind of like one of these, small little playground sets in my parents' home for the kids. So one of the things that they have there, they have like kitchen, and then they also have there's an area where they can kind of like sell, they can cook and sell meals. Pretty much, there's an area that they can come and order, and then they give them whatever food that they want. So even there, the kids are already engaging in these types of things. It's just play right now, but that play is still founded on some fundamentals, and the children are learning how to, work through these right and wrongs from that early age. So we're trying to teach them to share. You're trying to teach them to be fair. Again, like we said, the Quran is also teaching them about correct, the etiquettes of bartering, of trading. So all of these things have ways for them to be rendered into an elementary school or an adolescent kind of like curriculum. But the larger point is that the focus of the education needs to be those things. It needs to be Quran centric. So I think that's paradigm shifting, because as I observe in many communities, I think there is a reverence for the Quran, but as far as Quranic education goes, I think there's an emphasis on, at the early ages, memorization of certain short surahs. Fantastic, great. And then that transitions sometimes as I've seen in schools, it transitions into reading and proficiency in reading. And that's it. I've mostly seen those two things, which means younger kids are encouraged to memorize surahs from the 30th juz. And then when they become a little bit more of age, they teach them how to read, the mechanics of reading, how to read from the actual mushaf, maybe the rules of tajweed, advanced rules of tajweed, and then that's pretty much it. They're like, okay, well, you're done. You've mastered the Quran now. In very, very, very small instances have I seen people who continue on memorization where their children are either aiming to become hufaz, or they have certain goals of, let's say, 1 juz or 5 juz or 10 juz, whatever, or longer surah memorization. and those who go into recitation with with sawt and reciting as a qari would. But most of them, they kind of stay there, and then what'll happen is, because there isn't a continued education, that skill for many of the kids begins to decay, and then they find themselves in kind of this middle area of, they know how to read, they don't know how to read, they've memorized certain surahs, they've forgotten it, and that's where it ends. I've never seen a real emphasis on understanding what the Quran has to say, even those short surahs that they memorize. And they say, brother, these concepts are beyond their comprehension. So my question naturally would be, and respectfully would be, why are they memorizing the Arabic in the first place? And if the response is so they can get barakah in their life, well, there's so many other ways to get barakah in your life. I don't know if the function of the Quran is to be memorized to get barakah. Barakah just comes as a natural byproduct. So there were kids, they memorize this surah, وَيْلٌ لِكُلِّ هُمَزَةٍ لُمَزَةٍ الَّذِي جَمَعَ مَالًا وَعَدَّدَ. Okay. What is this talking about? This young kid, small little kid, reciting the surah beautifully. Okay, wait, what is this هُمَزَةٍ لُمَزَةٍ? What is jam'a mal? There's some stories that we do tell them. Alam tara kayfa fa'ala rabbuka bi ashabil fil. Yeah, Abraha came, was trying to destroy the Kaaba. Allah sent it. Great, that's fantastic. They know that now. But the majority of the other things that they learn, those lessons are not being communicated, so they don't know the meaning. And the base level of them is just understanding what it is that they're reading or they're memorizing. After that, it actually becomes translate that into life lessons of what they're seeing in society. Let me show you what wailul lil mutaffifin looks like in today's world. The defrauders. Who are the defrauders today? Again, at their level, give them examples of what that looks like. So when the child does become 11, 12, 13 years old, you're ready to teach them, more advanced advanced studies that allows them to better use the Islamic Sharia. You want to teach advanced economics and finance. You can do that with a 14-year-old, 15-year-old in high school. You can do that if you want. They'll have a much better understanding of how the world works, how money works, not only how to manage their finances, but also do it in ways that is in line with the Islamic outlook to earning, to trading, all of these things. So by the time the person is entering the workforce, they already know, hey, this is how the structure is. This is how we want to engage with it. This is what's acceptable. This is unacceptable. This is suspicious. This is questionable. All these things. The child can do that. But when we delay these things, what happens? You want to teach your kid kind of like the etiquettes of commerce and the etiquettes of work and the ethics of a good work ethic after they're after they're already working, they've entered the workforce. Why is that a problem? You say, brother, yeah, they should do it now because that's the appropriate time. They've already entered a world that the broad contours, the basic foundation of that has been established for them. Then Islam is some other thing that has to conform to the way that they understand the system. And wherever it conflicts now, they have a choice to make. Either I'm going to take seriously what Islam is telling me, or I'm just going to reject it as a nuisance and get on with my life. Apply this now to so many other kind of like fields and experiences that younger people have. It seems to be the same story all across the board. And I'm just speaking about my experiences, right? So when you plant the seed early and you nurture it, when the time does come for them to seriously engage, not only do they know the basics, they know the approach, they know the competition and the alternatives, they can argue for the merits of this system and be critical of the other system. And then they're in a position to make kind of an informed decision of whether they want to live according to the Islamic teaching, or they want to, they're struggling with it, or they have criticisms of it, or they think there needs to be advancements that are made. All of those things happen only when the child has already been immersed in the Islamic teachings. And you may say, brother, the economic thing, it didn't really like click with me. I'm sorry. It was. I'm sure you were making a nice point, but no. All right, let's talk about relationships then. Don't we think our children need to have some sort of foundation for them to know how they're supposed to manage their relationships? People of the same gender, people of the opposite gender, people who are older than them, people in positions of authority, all of these things, shouldn't they know? Shouldn't they know that there's people in positions of authority that may not have their best interests in mind? I'm not saying in the masjid, I'm not saying in the Islamic school, in general. Islam has to say when people come into positions of power, they are vulnerable. Some of them may make good choices, some of them may make poor choices. Which doesn't mean for you to be suspicious of everyone who's in a position of authority, but for you to also not exclusively and absolutely believe that anything that a person in a position of authority does is correct, because it's not. You know, there's rampant problem of abuse of people in authority that's all over society, in schools, in religious schools, in religious institutions. You don't think there's a better job that we can do to teach younger children? There's respect, and then there's kind of, you know, being aware of the dangers of certain things. Again, there's tens of examples, if more than that we could give about how we can organize our educational curriculums, infrastructure to teach these Quranic lessons, Islamic lessons, Shari'i lessons. So the child learns how to look at the world on the basis of them. Now, I know there's a lot to nuance here. You say, brother, the Sharia itself is archaic, has to be updated. Fine, whatever. True, in some respects. Well, we will only get around to ironing out some of the creases or working through some of the problems or untying some of the knots when we find a need for it. And I think this is one of the areas that we can really seriously tailor raising Muslim kids to live in this country by building an educational foundation that is Islamic in the truest sense, not a secular curriculum sprinkled with memorization of a few surahs or a few words of Arabic and then say, well, they satisfied some language requirement. Something more than that. That's what the Imam is saying here. So he said, I started with those things, teaching you the Quran and the halal and the haram. Please have some sort of a plan. And if not, come and, come and attack us and say, oh, brother, I thought you were the sheikh. You were supposed to do these things for us. And then we can have a nice conversation about how we all need to work together to make these things happen. But we need it badly. Again, these are my experiences that I've had. I have parents that call me, brother, can you have a class with my kids? Okay, about what? They're coming of age now, and I want to prepare them for now they're baligh. When are they becoming baligh? Oh, they're already baligh. Okay, great. How much do they know? Not very much. They don't listen to me. They're not praying. Okay, your kid's already 15 years old, and then you're calling me after the fact. You want me to have a private class with your kid, and I'm not saying anything. You're not mentioning anything about compensation. And then what? Then some miracle is supposed to happen that your kid is going to appreciate some outsider, some no-name nobody coming and telling him how he should or shouldn't live his or her life, and then everything will be okay. No, we have to be a little bit more proactive. So that's what the Imam, I think, is telling us. ثم أشفقت أن يلتبس عليك ما اختلف الناس فيه من أهوائهم وآرائهم مثل الذي التبس عليهم فكان أحكام ذلك على ما كرهت من تنبيهك له أحب إلي من إسلامك إلى أمر لا آمنوا عليك به الهلكة ورجوت أن يوفقك الله فيه لرشدك وأن يهديك لقصدك فأعدت إليك وصيتي هذه. I'll just read this section and we'll end inshallah for tonight. The Imam says, additionally, after I took that first step of Quran, Ahkam, Sharia, additionally, I feared that those issues over which people have bickered because of their desires and baseless opinions would confuse you as they confuse them. This is not just in religious issues, but includes religious issues too. There's so much misinformation because people just haven't taken the time to fully, correctly understand things. And they are, they're very much informed by their own life experiences and their perspectives and their biases. So when it comes out something completely different from what it seems that the tradition is saying. I wanted to keep you from kind of falling prey to that, the perplexity that you find in society. So again, religious issues, one, but larger, societal issues the same way. Is there not mass confusion in society right now in regards to certain things? At least the ethics of them are not clear. Some people will argue for one thing, it's okay. One people will argue for the other side. After a certain while, if you don't have a good foundation, either you'll become confused and you'll just abandon it, or whichever one gets to you first or makes the most convincing argument originally, that they make a good first impression, and then you're sold on the idea. The Imam says, listen, I care about you too much to kind of just leave you to go into society and figure things out yourself, become confused, and then choose a position that is really not in your, that doesn't best serve you or best serve your life as a Muslim. So I'm trying to stop that from happening. I'm trying to be proactive and give you something to work with when you do go into society. At least you have the tools to be able to work through what people are saying, what's right about it and what's not. I've advocated strongly for including logic and some sort of basic reasoning and rationality within high school curriculums. If it's within the Islamic studies, fine, no problem. Or within other, that has to be a part of every young person's toolkit for them to be able to think logically and be able to assess arguments logically, to figure out when they are falling prey to logical fallacies and how people are taking advantage of them using kind of skewed logic. The Imam is saying, I'm building you to be able to survive pretty much in a society that's full of contradictories. Thus, clarifying these points of confusion, despite my qualms about making you aware of such issues, is more amenable to me than turning you over to a quandary in which I do not feel confident you will not perish. You know what this reminds me of? Like just right now when I read this, it says, clarifying these points of confusion, despite my qualms about making you aware of such things. Those things that we're uncomfortable to speak out with our children because we think they're too young, right? They're too innocent. I don't want to kind of expose them to these things. Remember those thoughts that we have early on and we don't speak to our kids about certain things, and then we put a pin in it, and then we forget. And then when we think the time is right, we try to sit our kids down and have a conversation. We figure out, oh, the container's already full with a bunch of other junk. I got to clear it out first. I got to clean it. Then I got to replace it with something. And then I can't even do that. Those things, Imam's saying, to expose you to those things is more amenable to me than abandoning you and putting you out there in an area that I'm not confident you won't perish. It reminded me of this, these issues of gendered relations, sexuality, and how to maintain kind of like a healthy physical marital relationship. That's one of the things I just thought about immediately. It's uncomfortable. I don't want to talk to my teenage kid about having marital relations, about having a physical relationship. It's weird, right? Even in society, it's like it's so taboo. It's to talk. Your parents have to sit you down and have to talk with you. Guess what? If you and I don't want to have to talk with them much earlier than probably we want to, someone else is going to. Society is going to. Popular media and social medias are going to. Then that container that's empty right now that we can fill it with whatever we want is going to be filled with so much filth. Oh, my son, my daughter, mashallah, it's time for them now to get married. Alhamdulillah, I'm so happy for you. Invite me to their ceremonies, inshallah. I'd like to celebrate in that joy. But like, how much preparation is gone, and how much of what we want to tell them is they already have heard an alternative narrative from other sources. And then we're like confused, like, well, why is the rate of divorce so high? Why is it so difficult for younger people to get along? I married my wife and we've been married for 35 years, and yeah, we've had our problems, but we fought through it. I can bet you someone sat you down and told you the right and wrong way of doing things, or if anything, you were much younger. You were much younger when your time came around, or the circumstances of your life, your society, whatever, were all different. Get there first. Don't use the excuse of, I want to protect the innocence of my child. What innocence? You don't want your child to know the world is a corrupted, terrible place, that there are bad people in it and bad things happen. You don't want your kid to know that. No, brother, why would I want to ruin their life? And listen, yes, a carefree life is a life that's going to happen in the hereafter, in the afterlife. Or inshallah, when the Imam comes, Allah hastens his reappearance and cleans everything up. But in the meantime, this world is not a clean place. This world is full of things, full of dangers that we need to be careful of. We prepare our children by us informing them of what's happening in the world. Right? We just spoke about, Yom al-Quds yesterday. Like, shouldn't your kids know about the injustices that are happening in the world? Just focus on your, AP history exam right now. That's the most important. It is important, I promise. They'll get into a good school, they'll have a successful career. But like, imagine if your kid went through all of these things and doesn't know what's happening. Like, what is Yom al-Quds? What is that? And then they just parrot kind of like the things that are being said in society about, it's everyone's fault, and everyone's right and everyone's wrong, and everyone needs to get along, and these sorts of things. Anyways, I'm ranting a little bit. I apologize. But just like the Imam is saying, hey, pay attention. This is not something we should take lightly. I'm hoping that we don't do that either. So the Imam concludes this part. He says, وَرَجَوْتُ أَنْ يُوَفِّقَكَ اللَّهُ فِيكِ رُشْدَكَ وَأَنْ يَهْدِيَكَ لِقَصْدِكَ فَأَحِدْتُ إِلَيْكَ وَصِيَّتِي هَذِهِ. He says, I hope that Allah will grant you the success to find guidance and guide you to the middle way. For these reasons, I've charged you with this exhortation. And then the Imam he starts again. Like, imagine from where we began the letter up to this point, the Imam has kind of like gone through a quick summary of what he wanted to say. Not all the points, but now he's returned back to why he's writing this exhortation, this will, and then he's going to review and expand on what he said so far. So inshallah, we'll be reading through them again, picking up the pace a little bit. We made good progress tonight, alhamdulillah. And we'll keep reading through them, see what the Imam has to say for us. And I can't stress this enough. I hope that, inshallah, this will be a beginning of us going through and studying this letter collectively together. I'm just thinking about all the things that, all the wonderful contributions that you all can make in this conversation. I'm looking forward to having those conversations in the future. We'll see how we can best facilitate that. Even if I don't lead them, I would love to be a part of them, to learn from your experiences and from your interpretations and understanding of the letter, inshallah. Please keep me in your du'as. Walhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you so much for the wonderful lecture, Sheikh. Inshallah, we shall proceed with Dua Iftitah.
الثناء بحمدك وأنت مسدد للصواب بمنك وأيقنت أنك أنت أرحم الراحمين في موضع العفو والرحمة وأشد المعاقبين في موضع النكال والنقمة وأعظم المتجبرين في موضع الكبرياء والعظمة اللهم أذنت لي في دعائك ومسألتك فاسمع يا سميع مدحتي وأجب يا رحيم دعوتي وأقل يا غفور عثرتي فكم يا إلهي من كربة قد فرجتها وهموم قد كشفتها وعثرة قد أقلتها ورحمة قد نشرتها وحلقة بلاء قد فككتها الحمد لله الذي لم يتخذ صاحبة ولا ولدا ولم يكن له شريك في الملك ولم يكن له ولي من الذل وكبره تكبيرا الحمد لله بجميع محامده كلها على جميع نعمه كلها الحمد لله الذي لا مضاد له في ملكه ولا منازع له في أمره الحمد لله الذي لا شريك له في خلقه ولا شبيه له في عظمته الحمد لله الفاشي في الخلق أمره وحمده الظاهر بالكرم مجده الباسط بالجود يده الذي لا تنقص خزائنه ولا تزيده كثرة العطاء إلا جودا وكرما إنه هو العزيز الوهاب اللهم إني أسألك قليلا من كثير مع حاجة بي إليه عظيما وغناك عنه قديم وهو عندي كثير وهو عليك سهل يسير اللهم إن عفوك عن ذنبي وتجاوزك عن خطيئتي وصفحك عن ظلمي وسترك على قبيح عملي وحلمك عن كثير جرمي عندما كان من خطئي وعمدي أطمعني في أن أسألك ما لا أستوجبه منك الذي رزقتني من رحمتك وأريتني من قدرتك وعرفتني من إجابتك فصرت أدعوك آمنا وأسألك مستأنسا لا خائفا ولا وجلا مدلا عليك فيما قصدت فيه إليك فإن أبطأ عني عتبت بجهلي عليك ولعل الذي أبطأ على عبد لئيم منك علي يا رب. إنك تدعوني فأولي عنك، وتتحبب إلي فأتبغض إليك، وتتودد إلي فلا أقبل منك. كأن لي التطول عليك، فلم يمنعك ذلك من الرحمة لي والإحسان إلي والتفضل علي بجودك وكرمك. فارحم عبدك الجاهل وجد عليه بفضل إحسانك، إنك جواد كريم. الحمد لله مالك الملك مجري الفلك مسخر الرياح فالق الإصباح ديان الدين رب العالمين. الحمد لله على حلمه بعد علمه، والحمد لله على عفوه بعد قدرته، والحمد لله على طول أناته في غضبه، وهو قادر على ما يريد. الحمد لله خالق الخلق باسط الرزق فالق الإصباح ذي الجلال والإكرام والفضل والإنعام، الذي بعد فلا يرى وقرب فشهد النجوى، تبارك وتعالى. الحمد لله الذي ليس له منازع يعادل ولا شبيه يشاكل ولا ظهير يعاضد. قهر بعزته الأعزاء وتواضع لعظمته العظماء، فبلغ بقدرته ما يشاء. الحمد لله الذي يجيبني حين أنادي ويستر علي كل عورة وأنا أعصيه، ويعظم النعمة علي فلا أجازي. فكم من موهبة هنيئة قد أعطاني، وعظيمة مخوفة قد كفاني، وبهجة مونقة قد أراني. فأثني عليه حامدا وأذكره مسبحا. الحمد لله الذي لا يهتك حجابه ولا يغلق بابه ولا يرد سائله ولا يخيب آمله. الحمد لله الذي يؤمن الخائفين وينجي الصالحين ويرفع المستضعفين ويضع المستكبرين ويهلك ملوكا ويستخلف آخرين. والحمد لله قاصم الجبارين مبير الظالمين مدرك الهاربين أكال الظالمين صريخ المستصرخين موضع حاجات الطالبين معتمد المؤمنين. الحمد لله الذي من خشيته ترعد السماء وسكانها وترجف الأرض وعمارها وتموج البحار ومن يسبح في غمراتها. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله الحمد لله الذي يخلق ولم يخلق ويرزق ولا يرزق ويطعم ولا يطعم ويميت الأحياء ويحيي الموتى وهو حي لا يموت بيده الخير وهو على كل شيء قدير. اللهم صل على محمد عبدك ورسولك وأمينك وصفيك وحبيبك وخيرتك من خلقك وحافظ سرك ومبلغ رسالاتك أفضل وأحسن وأجمل وأكمل وأزكى وأنمى وأطيب وأطهر وأسنى وأكثر ما صليت وباركت وترحمت وتحننت وسلمت على أحد من عبادك وأنبيائك ورسلك وصفوتك وأهل الكرامة عليك من خلقك. اللهم وصل على علي أمير المؤمنين ووصي رسول رب العالمين عبدك ووليك وأخي رسولك وحجتك على خلقك وآيتك الكبرى والنبأ العظيم. وصل على الصديقة الطاهرة فاطمة سيدتي نساء العالمين. وصل على سبطي الرحمة وإمامي الهدى الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة. وصل على أئمة المسلمين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والخلف الهادي المهدي حججك على عبادك وأمنائك في بلادك صلاة كثيرة دائما. اللهم وصل على ولي أمرك القائم المؤمن والعدل المنتظر وحفه بملائكتك المقربين وأيده بروح القدس يا رب العالمين. اللهم اجعله الداعي إلى كتابك والقائم بدينك استخلفه في الأرض كما استخلفت الذين من قبله. مكن له دينه الذي ارتضيته له أبدله من بعد خوفه أمنا يعبدك لا يشرك بك شيئا. اللهم أعزه وأعزز به وانصره وانتصر به وانصره نصرا عزيزا وافتح له فتحا يسيرا واجعل له من لدنك سلطانا نصيرا. اللهم أظهر به دينك وسنة نبيك حتى لا يستخفي بشيء من الحق مخافة أحد من الخلق. اللهم إنا نرغب إليك في دولة كريمة تعز بها الإسلام وأهله وتذل بها النفاق وأهله. وتجعلنا فيها من الدعاة إلى طاعتك والقادة إلى سبيلك، وترزقنا بها كرامة الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم ما عرفتنا من الحق فحملنا، وما قصرنا عنه فبلغنا. اللهم المم به شعثنا، واشعب به صدعنا، وارتق به فتقنا، وكثر به قلتنا، وأعزز به ذلتنا، وأغن به عائلنا، واقض به عن مغرمنا، واجبر به فقرنا، وسد به خلتنا، ويسر به عسرنا، وبيض به وجوهنا، وفك به أسرنا، وأنجح به طلبتنا، وأنجز به مواعيدنا، واستجب به دعوتنا، وأعطنا به سؤلنا، وبلغنا به من الدنيا والآخرة آمالنا، وأعطنا به فوق رغبتنا يا خير المسؤولين وأوسع المعطين. اشف به صدورنا، وأذهب به غيظ قلوبنا، واهدنا به لما اختلف فيه من الحق بإذنك، إنك تهدي من تشاء إلى صراط مستقيم. وانصرنا به على عدوك وعدونا، إله الحق. آمين.
إليك فقد نبينا، صلواتك عليه وآله، وغيبة ولينا، وكثرة عدونا، وقلة عددنا، وشدة الفتن بنا، وتظاهر الزمان علينا. فصل على محمد وآله، وأعنا على ذلك بفتح منك تعجله، وبضر تكشفه، ونصر تعزه، وسلطان حق تظهره، ورحمة منك تجللنا، وعافية منك تلبسنا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. صل على محمد وآله الطاهرين.
That concludes the program for today. Inshallah, let us recite 5 Amma Yujibu for all those in need, and especially our brothers and sisters in Palestine. Amma yujibu al-muttarra idha da'ahu wa yakshifu as-su'. Amma yujibu al-muttarra idha da'ahu wa yakshifu as-su'. أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. سورة المباركة الفاتحة. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.